So hello, my name is Stephane Natkin. I am happy to be with you, and I have prepared a presentation. I will make a short presentation of myself and discuss about my point of view on the future of video games. So I start to share my presentation. You see me? I'm on the right. So just a short presentation of myself. So my main work in the game industry was to be the founder and during 18 years the director of the main school of game in France called ENJMIN, l'École nationale des jeux et médias interactifs numériques. It's a part of a big, very old institution called the CNAM, and it's located in Angoulême. If you don't know France, Angoulême is between Bordeaux and Cognac, a nice place to be. And then 2 years ago, I become a retired and professor, and I start a small company, la Compagnie des Martingales. La Compagnie des Martingales is a company working in consulting in games, making also acceleration process for new studios, and working as executive producer for several games. I co-produce with Arte a game called Vectronom, which was made by the German studio Ludopium, and I have 3 projects in process. A political game called Migrants, another game a little less political called Critical Mistrust, I will show you a little later, and a game about school harmless with a well-known French game designer, Eric Ville. So let's go back to the title of my game, How to Become Famous and Rich Working in the Game Industry. I got this title for a presentation I made to the students of the Cologne Game Lab, which were graduating, and I thought, what should I say to students who are going in the game industry? What is the interesting question for students? And I think, well, a student wants to become maybe rich and famous. So I will not answer to the question, but I will raise the question. And I took it for this. And we can start by a game. The game is Famous and Rich. Who is famous and rich? Well, do you know these people? Of course, almost everybody knows these people, which are in the movie industry. You have Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, Alfred Hitchcock, and Woody Allen. Now, let's make the same question for these people. As you are in the game industry, maybe you have the answer. And if you ask this question to anybody in the street, you will have a very few people able to answer. If we come back to the last question, almost everybody knows these 4 people. And when you ask a question about the game people, so do you have any answer? I give you the answer. So of course we have one of the main heroines of the game, Lara Croft. You have Patrick Desilets, who is a well-known designer at Ubisoft, who worked on the first version of Assassin's Creed. Victor Antonov, who is a very famous graphic designer, and Jordan Mechner, the father of Prince of Persia, and last heroes of games, Rayman and the Raven Rabbits. But if you are in the game industry, maybe you know at least Lara Croft and the Raven Rabbits. And if you know a little, you are going to several conferences, maybe you know the other. If you are not in the game industry, nobody knows these people. Now, let's go to the second question. Who are rich in this panel? Well, of course, no one of these people are really poor people. This is clear, but who is at which level of richness do you place all these people? Let's give the answer. Well, the richest of all is Bill Gates, of course. Not far. Around $40 billion less, you have Mark Zuckerberg. And if you do, there are two rich people coming from the game industry on my panel. You have Yves Guillemot, who is at the head of the Ubisoft group, and you have Gabe Newell, who was the founder of Valve Corporation. But you see, the level of richness in the game industry is not exactly the same that the level of richness in other industry, computer, for example, for Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, and movie for George Lucas. So, and just another slide to evaluate the importance of the game industry in terms of employment and business. These are all statistics in France and Germany. I don't have it. 10 years ago, I made a study to know how many people were working in the world, worldwide, in the game industry. And at that time, I'd said 10 to 15 years ago, it was around 120,000 people. I think that it has been at least tripled, but I don't have any good statistics on worldwide. But if I take in France, where it's a little more easy, or in Germany, in France, you are around 8,000 people, 7,000 to 8,000 people in the production, of course, not in the marketing and selling, but in the production of game, which make a big place to produce car. If you are making a car factory, you will have at least 4,000 people, and a big car factory, you have 8,000 people. So the whole game industry in France is equivalent to the number of people working in one factory. So, and these are in French statistics from the number of people in game company, and most of the game company in France, and it's almost the same in Germany. It's not exactly the same in England. In England, you have more middle-size company, but in France, most of the game company are very small, with two or three exceptions. You have a middle company, and the only big company is Ubisoft, of course. So, and if you look how many the production in terms of money in the game industry, well, it's very difficult to evaluate what is the value of the production going out from the studio. I'm not talking about the sales of games, but how much money are creating studios in developing games. It's difficult because student generally has several activities, so you cannot only add all the money they got, but if you make a raw estimation, somebody from Ubisoft says, I'm very optimistic, it's less than 1 billion euro, which is less than 5% of Orange, the telecommunication operator, annual sales. Which means that if you are really interested, for example, from a political point of view, if you are financing a gaming school somewhere in the world, your main interest for gaming is probably not the economy of the game industry. It's somewhere else, and I will try to discuss this somewhere else in the rest of my talk. So, you have a small, important value-added industry, but this industry is working in a world full of sound and fury, in particular during the 20 last year, but since the beginning, because the beginning of video game industry is 40 years, 45 years, not more than that. So let's go through this. and can ask you a question and answer in the chat system. From your point of view, what are the main events that have changed the creation and the development and the market of video game in the last 15 years? Well, of course, the first change was the evolution of the technology. The game industry is one of the industry which is greatly driven by the evolution of the technology. We have new technology allows to produce new type of contents, and new type of contents change the production process, the cost of games, and the market. But at the beginning, from the time we had the very classical game on a home computer up to games on augmented or virtual reality, with a major change which was done by Nintendo with the Wii. This is the core of how the industry evolved. But it's not the goal. The goal, and from this point of view, Nintendo had very great importance 15 years ago, was to think that the players were not only teenagers shooting all the day in their own room, and they should be another market. And to come into this market, you had to change something in the game, make games for a woman which is not anymore a teenager. She's older, maybe older than me or the same age. And games for children, for small children, for specifically designed for girls or something like that. And to do that, you have to use the technology, the possibility of the technology, and probably the Wii console was, and the interface of the Wii console was clearly designed to open the market of games. And this is, from my point of view, something which changed radically the whole evolution of games during these years. The first consequence was the awareness of the independent scene. Before, the independent scene exists since a long time, but if you go to the conference like the Game Developer Conference, before 2006, 2007, it was considered as a niche. People were looking with interest, some young people making games, and that was all. Then at the time, the people of the game industry say we need new market. To have new market, we have new interface, but we need new designers. We need new point of view on games that cannot be made by people who are making classical games. And at that time, the importance of the independent scenes, the independent scene become more and more important, and more people were looking at the price which were given at independent games, and found people who are able to make the change. And you can see, I would say around 2007, 2008, 2010, the number of games who went from the independent scene to the AA or AAA scenes, and in particular the number of people coming from the independent scene into the main game industry. This is not really original. The same process, you find the same process in movie and television, in audiovisual, where you have some people making short films, and people are looking what's happening in school of movie, in new creators, and then at a certain point, these people become the mainstream of the industry. But this has changed considerably, and you had a lot of new ideas, and I have chosen to show you something maybe you all know, but for me, it's very interesting experience. You know, the game Her Story. Let's start to see Her Story. Excuse me. Tell me if you hear, you should hear the sound. Okay. The next, this transformation raised to something which is the evolution of the economical model of games. The first step was the apparition of games on social network. Zynga launched Farmville in 2007, I think so, I'm not sure. And a lot of independent studio, went into these possibilities because it's something which seems to be very great. You don't need anymore a publisher. You put your game on Facebook and you win a lot of money because you get all the things that the people are buying on your games with your currencies. It worked like that during 2 or 3 years. And after 3 years, Facebook said, okay, now guys, you will use my money and I will get all the main incomes of this market because I am the one who is at the end of the supply chain. I am the one confronted to the people who buy the games and I have to win the most of the money. And people of the game industry did not really understood that, but it's classical. If you go in supermarket, the one who is winning most of the money is not the people who are making grapes or cheese. It's the people who are selling them to the customers. Online distribution, at the beginning, it was also seen as a only a big chance. We don't need anymore somebody who packaged the game, who put the game into some place to sell it and things like that. We studio think we will have more money. But they didn't thought there was two consequences. Selling online is not the same thing that selling to a publisher. You need some people of marketing, you need to do a lot of things that you didn't have to do. And you had also exactly the same thing that with the game on social networks. The one who are selling at the end, who are in front of the players, is the one who are getting the most of money. But the third thing, which has become very important, that the game who was really a product, you buy a game in a place, become a service. Even I visit Electronic Arts Studio beginning of 2012 or something like that. And they explained that even very classical games like FIFA, which was some rent, every year you got a new FIFA and everybody was buying the new version of FIFA. Yeah, they had to change their marketing because you had to follow the players during all the years and what they were doing and what they were liking, and they need a new person in this football club. You have to introduce it, and you are now in a continuous process in front of the players, which is something interesting, but which is something new and difficult to do. Which lead also to another way to sell games, the free-to-play and variants, the idea to make games like television series, sell it by episode, and of course, the consequence was the triumph of analytics. Of course, before the publisher knew what kind of people were using their game, but now, when you are making a game like Candy Crush, you every weeks you look what player are buying, are not buying. Will the game have all the artificial intelligence, which is generally rather stupid, who tells you what will happen in 3 weeks if you don't change your market money, and the analytics become one of the main activity of all the people who are selling games. And now we are going into another change, a change which is based on the idea that games are a part of the broadcast world, and you have broadcasting model, either subscription and streaming, and I will come back on this because it will probably be the core of who will be the main actor of the game industry in the next 20 years. So another evolution was the idea that games could be used for other purpose than games, which is called serious game or gamification. I used to tell it's useful game. A classical game don't have any other use than being something for you to feel happy or to feel in fun. It's a useful game has another dedicated purpose, making you exploring a museum. This is a therapeutical game for people which has Alzheimer. They play the game and it gives you some indication of their level. And this is a game I worked on, which is a game for your finding your what you will do in your life in terms of work. I have idea. So I will just present you. I'm very interested in political game. I am working on a very political game which is called Migrants. But this one is not so political, but it's a project that I am working on, and I will show you the. The video of critical mistrust. this game is a game which is based on two things. One is how we would think would be 2040 if we were in 1970. What is new the technology of 2040? It's a uchrony about that. So as you see, the Soviet Union is still alive, and you have a lot of things which did not really happen, but which is in the imagination. And the second idea, it's a multiplayer escape game in virtual reality, where there is the game create mistrust between the players, and it's both the combination of the two which make this game. So I have talked a little about serious game. I open this question, and we will not wait to make the answer because I have lost too much time far from you. But do you know really an interesting serious game? There was a really, in 7-8 years ago in France, a great interest in serious game as a market by itself, and it didn't give the... There are many people making serious games. If you give the following meaning to serious game, use something coming from the game, the technology, the principle of design, or something else to make something else. And in this sense, there is a huge market of serious games. But the company who are specialized in serious games are not working so well. And I would say the market is not clearly identified, and I will come back to this a little later. So another evolution is the evolution to games which are not in the classical circle of games, where you have a limited time and limited place and limited people who are playing to the game. I will not go too much in details due to time, but this started with people making alternate reality games. And Eric Viennot is a French designer who launched a game called In Memoriam. I will let you, I will leave my slides and I will let you look to the trailer of In Memoriam. In Memoriam is a game that you play online with other people, and you are trying to find a criminal, and to do that you have to find, using Google, a lot of news, and at a certain point the criminal of the game send you some message on your emails, and in the second version it call you on your cell phone, and the time where you are playing or not playing are not strictly different. They are merged together. Which leads to a concept which was very in the trend of transmedia, was very important to feel the world. The world is living, but what is behind is still very important. A content that is only coherent because it's available on several supports, something which is in narrative by essence, but interactive, who manage the relationship from the real world and the virtual world. You are in the street, in the real street, and a phone calls you, and you have to react to this. That links the time and the space of the two worlds, and which integrates also, this is very important, the traditional media. I have worked on a game where you have to look to the television to answer to the game, and you have to play the game. If you play the game, you have a better understanding on what is in the television series. But this is not really new. Maybe you know this very famous radio broadcasting by Orson Welles in 1936 or 7, if I don't remember, where Orson Welles played the War of Worlds on the radio in United States, saying it's a mix between the reality and the fiction. So, to finish about that, if you are in the game industry since that time, you are playing something which is called, in English, you are the nose in the gridstone. In France, we say le nez dans le guidon, the nose in the handleback. You are always looking to the near future, and you don't have really the time, generally, if you are in a studio, to look to the long term. If you go to the GDC, every year you have somebody, the whole GDC rounds is full of things which win the last year. The 1 year after Candy Crush, everybody was planning to make Candy Crush. 1 year after the launch of the first Oculus, the whole launch was about retail virtuality, etc. And generally, it's always too late. Something which is very strange is that the game industry is probably one of the most creative, but it's always running about the last thing which wins. And the chance is that we have independent game designer who are trying to go further than the last thing which wins. So I have almost still have 5 or 10 minutes to finish and ask a question. My point of view on tomorrow's games. Then the first thing is that games will be more and more a nesting between the real world and the virtual world. I will not go too much in detail, but if you look, we are now in the third events of both worlds interact. You have people making games which react to some of the events with latency. It will be more and more possible. And you have some games which you don't use anymore a gaming interface. You are playing on your cell phone. You have some thing that you find in the city where you have a screen where you can push a button and this button becomes something you play in the game. And the mixing of real and virtual world is becoming more and more important. The second the consequence of that is that, from my point of view, there are two things which will become, from an economical point of view, very important. The first is the relocation. Relocation is that it's a game that you have to play somewhere. And if you think a little about this, this is really has a great economic impact, because you can create relation between games and existing places, existing market or not marketplace. And if you look what have started with Pokemon Go, and there was some experience before Pokemon Go, and things like Sandwalks, you have an idea then how you can make a certain kind of relocation, and I think there will be other kind of relocation. The second is rematerialization, making games which have a support that you need to buy somewhere. And the Nintendo Labo Workshop, it's also a very good example of that. You have the game, but you need to buy something. And this is also, from a marketing point of view, very important. And something which is related to relocation, and is probably the main important point, is the game can be considered as a show. The e-sport is the example. The communication model of e-sport is not to sell game, it's to sell the performance of somebody playing a game. And you can make games which you make music, and you have concert of games, and you can make games where you make a competition, a physical competition, and you can make this competition as a part of the game. And I think this is really a new kind of market which will evolve. If I think about music, when I was young, I'm old now, when I was young, people were making concerts to sell CD. And now they are making, I would say, online CD to sell concerts. And I think you will have the same thing in a part of the market of the game. So, and the next player, if most of the game become broadcasted, then the player will be the broadcaster. Maybe there will be new broadcaster. But if you think the size of the biggest game publisher in the world and the size of a company like Netflix, I don't talk even about Apple and Google, you see that at a certain time, the broadcaster will need to buy game publisher, because when you will make a television series, you will have a located game, which is a part of the television series, and you will need another. So all this will probably slowly mix, which means that the importance of the game, to come back to the beginning of our discussion, is a game will be one part of the whole world of media, but the new part, the way you introduce interaction between the spectators and the media. So I don't have a lot of time, but to make a conclusion, what makes video game different? You can different from other media. You can consider this for a lot of point of view, but I have talked a lot about economics and evolution. I will take the aesthetic point of view. The game, something which is in a game, is a way to create an emotion. I will show you the beginning of trailers of 2 games. I still have 9 minutes.
Trained to be told a gun is your father and your mother.
Can you leave the link also in the comments? It's not very audible.
And this leads to a lot of things which are not anymore games. Game engine rendering now is used to make animation. A social network is by itself a much bigger world than games. And experimentation of virtual reality and augmented reality. Of course, the technology of virtual reality, augmented reality was designed a long, long time ago. But making something which is accessible for everybody was designed for games, and now it's used in many other things. So the whole idea comes from games, both from the design, from the technology, the use of technology point of view, comes on a lot of other fields, and that's why it's important in game. So to come back to my first question, how to become rich in the game industry, the answer I gave to the student in one sense, work as an innovative game programmer, writer, sound or graphic designer, but not in the game industry. Take your knowledge that you get from games and put it in an industry who is winning much more money. Or work, you like games. Games is the core of your heart, and then work in the game industry and forget about become very famous and rich. Thank you.